Good morning, everybody. We're live here from the birdhouse, and we are midway through January already. And today we're going over the different birds you can find in your backyard this time of the year. It ranges and changes a little bit here and there, but right now there's still a good diversity of things that you can find in your backyard, and we'll talk about what your best bet is in order to attract them. As always, we love to know who's on. You can say hi in the comments. If you have any questions, you can throw those in there too. And we love to know what kind of things you're seeing. So definitely put those in the comments as well. And we'll get started here. We'll share some of your photos too. We had some photos sent in. But as far as the common birds that you can find in your backyard, assuming that you don't have a huge portion of woods where you're going to see a bunch of owls, or you're by a pond where you're going to find a bunch of ducks, these are your best bets as far as birds that you can find in your backyard right now. The first being chickadees. I've been seeing a lot of chickadees in my backyard personally, hopping all around, eating seeds from the plants that I left up, the plants that have seed heads. They've been hopping around on those and eating. Also coming to feeders. Chickadees will eat peanuts, they eat black oil sunflower, they like the sunflower hearts. So they'll eat quite a few things from your backyard feeders. If you've been feeding the Finch Favorite blend, which is a mix of Niger seed and the fine sunflower hearts, you might find that they come to that as well. So chickadees will be around all winter long. They'll be making their little calls all winter long. And so they're a really common backyard birds. Same with tufted titmouse. A lot of people have been reporting tufted titmouse more so than in years past, I would say. They're in the same family as the chickadee, and so they have similar habits. You can find them coming to similar feeders. They love peanuts. They love sunflower seeds. So tufted titmouse will be here all winter long as well. And people have been seeing quite a few of them coming to their feeders, coming to their window feeders. And they're those little gray birds with a little crest. And not as vocal as the chickadees are, but they're definitely still a little bit vocal. They did have their call. That sounds like they're saying Peter, Peter, Peter. There's house sparrows, of course, here year round. In the spring and summer, you'll see them coming in and out of birdhouses. If you have a birdhouse that has an opening of 1.5 inches in diameter or so that they can fit into, they'll absolutely nest in those. But then they'll come to feeders all year round too. This is probably the most common bird I've got in my backyard, probably the same with a lot of you guys. But house sparrows will be here all winter. And then there's other sparrows to be on the lookout for too that people are reporting. White-throated sparrows. So there's a couple different variations, color variations of white-throated sparrows. They're not always that bright, have that bright black and white crown. Sometimes it's a little bit more muted, a little bit more brown, like the bird pictured there on the right, but they still have that little white throat patch. So be on the lookout for them, especially underneath your feeders. They tend to, in my yard at least, kind of clean up underneath the sunflower seed feeder. So we've got white-throated sparrow, and then also white-crowned sparrow, which is significantly bigger than the white-throated sparrow. White-throated sparrow are more house sparrow sized, a little bit, maybe a little bit bigger than your common house sparrow. But the white-crowned sparrow is even bigger. They're not going to have that white throat patch. They're a very overall gray color, and they've got that black and white crown on the top of their head. So just like those white-throated sparrows, they are most likely to be underneath their feeder, cleaning up the seeds that have fallen down. American tree sparrow are here in the winter months. We don't see them in the summer so much. They are more of a northern bird, but you might find them in your backyard this time of the year or hopping around in the trees. They've got that chestnut colored crown on the top of their head and their bicolored bill that is black on the top and yellow on the bottom. So that is your American tree sparrow. And then there's song sparrows around too, not as vocal this time of the year as they are in the spring, but they are around. Not super common in backyards, but if you go on a hike, you might see them outside. But you just might happen upon them in your yard. You never know. Again, usually underneath your feeder, cleaning up those sunflower seeds and checking out those shells to see if there's any seeds inside. And they've got quite a few stripes on their breast, and usually they have that little, almost like a black polka dot there in the middle of their breast as well. So really chatty birds in the spring, but this time of the year they're more quiet. And then also in the sparrow family is going to be the dark-eyed junco. And this one is probably the most common out of the white-crowned, the white-throated, the tree sparrow. Out of all those sparrows, you're probably most likely to see this dark-eyed junco if it gets grouped in with that group. They are here every year. They come down this way for the winter, and then by the spring they usually disperse, although we do have some that are here year round. But in general, they're going to be a winter bird here, and they love sunflower seed, the sunflower hearts. They love millet, those little round seeds that sometimes the birds throw on the ground when they're going after the bigger sunflower seeds. But little birds like this dark-eyed junco, and then those others like the tree sparrow or white-crowned sparrow or white-throated sparrow, they will all eat that little millet that sometimes gets thrown out on the ground. Another bird that will eat that millet and will tend to perch on your feeders if you've got feeders with a lot of perching room, so feeders with a tray or a hopper style feeder with lots of space for the bird to land on, you'll probably get yourself some mourning doves. Mourning doves are here all year round again. Not super chatty this time of the year, but they love millet. They like sunflower hearts. They have a pretty small bill compared to other birds, so it can be hard for them to crack open larger seeds. Even the black oil sunflower can be a little difficult for them to crack into here and there. So they like the smaller stuff. So if you're trying to encourage mourning doves, you want to add more seeds that are little for these guys. Now, on the other hand, cardinals can crack open large seeds, and they're here all year round. People have been reporting bigger groups of cardinals all together in their backyards because they're not territorial this time of the year. So come springtime, you're probably not going to see a tree full of male cardinals all together, but this time of the year you just might, because they all kind of group up for safety in numbers, and they'll forage all together. So it's not uncommon to see that this time of the year. And the cardinals will make their little chip calls, so they can be vocal this time of the year as well. But they are here all year round. And then we've got our woodpeckers. So there are a few different species that you can find. In general, our woodpeckers are common all year round. And then there's one migratory species that I've thrown in here too that is more common in the spring, but every once in a while people report them in the winter. The downy woodpecker is this little guy. He's about the size of a suet cake. Your best bet to attract woodpeckers is to put out suet or to put out peanuts in the shell or peanut pickouts, which are those the insides of the peanuts. And woodpeckers absolutely love them. The downy woodpecker is the smallest woodpecker we have. It has a little bill. Like I said, he's about the size of a suet cake, so not that big of a woodpecker. But in comparison, the hairy woodpecker, which is on the right here, is significantly bigger than the downy woodpecker and has a much bigger bill. So on the left, you've got the downy woodpecker here, and on the right is the hairy woodpecker. So you can see the size difference there. And that hairy woodpecker has a much, much larger bill. These are both males because they've got the red on the back of the head. If they didn't have red on the back of their heads, that's how you would know that they are female. So both of them are here year round. Same with the red-bellied woodpecker. Another common bird that will come to your suet feeder, that'll come to your peanut feeder. And they can be pretty chatty this time of the year. Even in the middle of winter, you might hear them making some of their calls. But the red-bellied woodpecker, definitely, it was one of the more common birds you'll get if you put out a suet feeder. And in the winter, you might also get the northern flickers more so than you would in the spring and in the summer. We get a lot of reports of them in the winter months coming to suet feeders. And they're not super common at feeders in the spring and summer, although we do have them in the area. But it just seems like they like to come to the suet feeders in the winter, probably when their food that they're looking for is more scarce. But this is the northern flicker, another woodpecker species that we have. And then there's the largest one, the pileated woodpecker, which can be about 16 inches long, so they can be quite large. And they'll come to suet feeders as well, especially if you have those larger paddle tail feeders like this one here, where the woodpeckers can use their tails to rest on that paddle tail, and that makes them upright and they can easily feed. So all of these woodpeckers we have here not only in the winter months, but they are year-round residents here in upstate / western New York. Along a lot of the East Coast, actually, they're going to be year-round residents. And then our migratory species is called the yellow-bellied sapsucker. Like I said, originally they're more common in the spring, but they've been reported in the winter months too. They're going to be about the size, I would say, in between a downy woodpecker and a hairy woodpecker. They're almost like a hairy woodpecker, but skinnier, and they've got that red on the top of their head. And if you're able to see their belly, there's a little kind of yellowish wash on it. But you just might happen upon yellow-bellied sapsuckers in the winter. Probably not coming to your suet feeder. We really don't get reports of them coming to suet feeders so much, but you might see them in your trees foraging for insects. So be on the lookout. You never know. Another bird that we have year-round is the European starling. This is one of our introduced species, but they are also quite chatty and quite loud. If you see those murmurations of the birds all flying in movement together, it's probably going to be European starlings that you're seeing doing that. And this is a European starling in its winter plumage. In the spring, they're more iridescent. But right now they're kind of black and brown with all these polka dots on them. So we have them also year round, and they come to all kinds of food at your feeders. You've probably found if you have feeders out in the winter, they will eat suet, they'll eat sunflower seed. They don't really eat Niger seed, but the one thing that they don't like is the safflower seed. So if you're trying to attract some different birds like cardinals and not get a lot of blackbirds and starlings, safflower is your best bet if you've got starlings raiding your feeders. Now, another larger bird that is spotted here in the winter sometimes is the northern mockingbird. So this isn't one you're necessarily going to see at your feeders, but people do get them in their backyards. In the spring, they come to oriole feeders here and there. They'll eat oranges and they'll eat the jelly sometimes. But some of them are here year-round now. And not only do they have that long tail, which helps you identify them, but when they fly, they have these bright white wing patches, which make them which are easily identifiable when you see them flying in the air. So they like to be kind of in grapevines and trees and shrubs that have some protection. So you just might happen upon northern mockingbird this winter too. I know I see one every time I go to the bank. They have one just hanging out in a tree there. So they are around here in the winter months. And coming to your feeders, you might also have the nuthatches. The nuthatches are commonly found crawling down trees as they're looking for insects and nuts that have been stored away. But we've got two species here throughout the year, the white-breasted nuthatch and the red-breasted nuthatch. They eat suet as well, so you can attract them with your suet feeders. They like peanuts, and they also like sunflower hearts. So those are some different things you can put out to attract your nuthatches. So you can see them at feeders and then also climbing down trees. If you happen upon seeing something climbing up a tree in your backyard, it's probably going to be this bird. This is called a brown creeper, and they're known to creep up trees, again, searching for food and insects. This is a cavity nesting bird, but not really a common backyard bird that comes to a feeder. So you're not going to see them at your feeders, but I know I get them in my trees climbing up as they're foraging. So be on the lookout for them as well this winter. And then there's house finches. We have them year round. Definitely a feeder bird, a common feeder bird. They like the safflower seed. They like sunflower seed. They'll eat Niger seed if you've got your finch feeders out. So they eat a diversity of different things. The males have that reddish wash, and then the females are kind of like a brownish gray with stripes, and they don't have any of the red on them. And then if you see something that kind of looks like a house finch, but a lot brighter, it's probably going to be a purple finch. There's been some reported around the area this winter. They're a little bit larger than the house finch. The males are much, much more brightly colored, and they don't have the males don't have the striping on them like those house finches do. So that's a really good way to identify one from the other. If you've got a bird that's got some reddish wash on it, but it also has a lot of stripes, that's going to be a house finch. If it doesn't have the stripes, it's going to be your male purple finch. Now, the female is very stripy, and her stripes are more bold than the female house finch. And the female purple finch also has that stripe that goes above her eye. So those are some different ways to identify them. The female purple finch, I would say, looks most like a female rose-breasted grosbeak, which we're really not going to have around here this time of the year. They are further south. So if you see something that almost looks like a female rose-breasted grosbeak, you've got yourself a female purple finch. Then there's pine siskins, which come to Niger feeders. They almost look like a mix, I always think, between a female house finch and a goldfinch. They've got a little bit of yellow on their wings, they've got stripes, and they've got a very, very sharp beak. And you can find them eating lots of little seeds. So again, millet and finch seed. Our finch favorite seed is great for pine siskin, and also Niger seed. Those are all things that the pine siskin will come to. And there's been reports of pine siskins around this winter, as well as your goldfinch. This is what our goldfinches look like this time of the year. They're not that bright yellow that you're used to seeing in the spring and summer, but we do have finches here year round. And just like those pine siskins and the purple finches and the house finches, the goldfinches really love Niger seed. They love our finch favorite mix, which is the Niger seed and ground up sunflower hearts. Sunflower hearts are another thing. You can just feed them just plain sunflower hearts. But goldfinches, they kind of flock around unpredictably. So if you've had them for months and then they disappear, that's not uncommon. But just make sure your feeder, if you're having that issue, make sure your feeder is clean, because if they go to a feeder that has any kind of mold or anything like that in it, they tend to go elsewhere and they won't come back for a little bit. So make sure that feeder is clean and the seed is fresh. The Niger seed can go bad after 2 or 3 months. So if you've had your seed laying around for a while, it might not be good anymore. And then there's the berry eating birds. So birds that might not come to your backyard feeders so much unless you put out berries or some kind of insects like mealworms, but they are around here in the winter. Bluebirds especially come to heated bird baths, or if you have our bugs, nuts, and fruit blend out, either in loose seed or in logs, you might just get these eastern bluebirds. And there's a female on the left and then a male up top. But they are around here all year round. Some of them go a little bit further south for the winter, but people do report them here in the Western New York area all winter long. Same as robins, although they tend to go a little bit further south for the winter. We do have some residents that stay here all year round, and you can especially see them coming to trees and bushes that have berries on them. And same with cedar waxwings, same kind of idea. They form flocks and will go to different berry producing trees and shrubs, and you can find them here all year round. And then there's American crow. You might see them flying overhead around dusk as they're going from their feeding sites to their roosting sites at night. A lot of people are in that flight path here in the Rochester area when we've got these massive, massive groups of thousands and thousands of crows flying overhead. And they might just happen to stop in your backyard and hang out in the trees for a little bit. That happens in my backyard quite often. A mix of American crow and then also fish crow are usually in that mix as well. So we've got a couple different crow species common here all year round. And then there's the birds of prey. Finally, some birds of prey that you might just happen upon in your backyard. Red-tailed hawks, especially if you have a lot of squirrels this time of the year. You might get a red-tailed hawk hunting for those squirrels. Although your most common bird that you're going to find as far as birds of prey go in your backyard this time of the year is going to be a Cooper's hawk, and they are known to hunt small songbirds at feeders, especially during the winter months. We get reports of them all the time. So if you have a bird of prey in your backyard right now, it is probably a Cooper's hawk, but it could also be a sharp-shinned hawk. Sharp-shinned hawks are significantly smaller usually than Cooper's hawk, although there is some overlap in size. But the more common one of the two is going to be your Cooper's hawk in your backyard. But there are sharp-shins around as well, like this photo sent in by Kathy of a sharp-shinned hawk in her backyard, and it's going after something there on a little tree stump. As far as your photos, you guys have sent in some photos. Mark J sent in a whole bunch of different photos here of his backyard birds. So I'd love to know what kind of things you guys have in your yards right now. You can throw those in the comments. Here's a great photo he sent in of a sharp-shinned hawk, saying sharp-shinned hawk protecting its catch from hungry crows. After a little back and forth at each other, the hawk flew to another tree as the crows went the other direction. Interesting to see nature behavior unfold in the backyard. Yes, so if you ever hear a whole bunch of crows going crazy, making all kinds of noise and chattering, and just really, really making a scene, I guess is the way to say it, there's probably a bird of prey around. That's a really good way to find birds of prey, is when you hear the crows going nuts. And so look to see where they are. If they're dive bombing something, it's probably going to be a bird of prey. Most of the time, it's going to be something like a red-tailed hawk or a Cooper's hawk, but it might be something like an owl too, like a great horned owl or a screech owl. So those crows will really make a scene if there's a bird of prey around to chase it around. And then here's another photo of that sharp-shinned hawk. Really great photo there, sent in by Mark. And he also sent in a bunch of photos of some birds in his backyard. Here's one that says female cardinal in the high winds last week, and you can see her feathers blowing all around. And then a tufted titmouse with a snack. Off it goes. And there's a tufted titmouse there enjoying a peanut. So peanuts in the shell are great for things like blue jays, but tufted titmouse will eat them also. Oh, speak of the devil, here is a blue jay. And the blue jay is enjoying its peanut in the shell right there. And then cardinals, he sent in some really nice photos, not only of the male cardinal, but the female cardinal. And they were going after peanuts as well. So I've seen that in my backyard, especially in the winter. It seems like they go after the peanuts a little bit more. They've got that high protein, so it gives them the calories that they need here in the winter months. So usually we think of cardinals going after sunflower seed and safflower seed, but they will eat peanuts as well. And then here's a female cardinal, and she was also enjoying a peanut there. So both the male and female cardinals eating the peanuts. And here's the northern flicker. So here's that woodpecker. You can see its nice big bill, its polka dotted breast. So this is the northern flicker. And then a Carolina wren. So people have been reporting Carolina wren here and there. This is another one that you can see in your backyard all year round. They will come to suet. They come to sunflower hearts. You might get them coming to a finch mix if it has sunflower hearts in it. They'll also eat mealworms. So just like the bluebirds, they'll eat that bugs, nuts, and fruit mix and those logs that we have. So that's a good way to attract Carolina wrens if you've got them in your yard. And this is one that is also chatty. So they do a lot of singing. So you can sometimes hear them before you see them, but really cute little Carolina wren there. And then a downy woodpecker. You can see its little bill. And a white-breasted nuthatch. So he's got a good diversity of birds. And I think this is the last one, the dark-eyed junco. So lots of backyard birds there sent in by Mark. And if you guys have any questions, you can put those in the comments. We'd love to know what kind of things you guys are seeing. Steel Monkey says, Liz asking Santa for a heated bird bath was the best thing I did. It works great. Yeah, we hear all kinds of stories of the different birds and sometimes even animals that'll come to heated bird baths in the wintertime. Steel Monkey says, also, I got snow and along with it came the juncos. I'm no longer taking it personal now. So happy on Cape Cod, Mass. Okay, so Steel Monkey was looking for juncos, hadn't seen any yet, and looks like with the snow came some juncos. You can pull up a photo here of the Juncos to give you a reminder here of what they look like. There's one right there. So yeah, dark-eyed Juncos with the snow. Sounds like the Juncos came with it, which is really fun. Sharon is on and says, good morning. Stephanie says, good morning, all. Since changing out my finch favorite seed, I have seen an increase in goldfinches. I still get lots of cardinals, jays, titmice, chickadees, nuthatches, woodpeckers. The number of starlings I see recently increased, but the sparrows far outnumber all the rest. Yes, I feel you. That is the same in my backyard. More sparrows and starlings than anything else, but the occasional cardinal and what have you. And it sounds like she's having good luck with the finch favorite seed, which we hear all the time. If people have historically fed Niger and then they switch to the finch favorite seed, it usually gives them a bigger diversity. So that doesn't surprise me that you're seeing that as well with that finch favorite seed. They like not only the Niger, but those ground up sunflower hearts that are in there. She also says, I was feeling sorry for the squirrels in the frigid chill yesterday, so I put out some peanut suet and peanuts in the shell for them. Doesn't it figure that they promptly buried the peanuts? Guess they aren't starving in this cold after all. How funny. Yeah, they usually have some stashes of food cached away, but that certainly does not stop them from coming to bird feeders, as many of you guys know. Lynn is on and says, good morning. I usually have many titmice, but lately not so many. Are the sparrows driving them away? It's possible. I mean, the sparrows can be more bold, that is for sure. One thing you can do is mix in some of the titmice's favorite foods with your seed. I would recommend, if you don't have a seed blend that has the peanut pickouts or the peanuts, like the insides of the peanuts, to mix some of those in with your food that you're feeding now. Or you could put out just a peanut feeder that doesn't have any perches, and then they can cling onto the side of it. And sparrows can do that, but it's a little bit more difficult for them to do so. So that might encourage the titmice to come to that feeder, and you can have your sparrows kind of over at your other feeder. But sometimes they do kind of scare away some other birds, especially if they're in big groups. They can sometimes not play too nicely together. Stephanie says, I have seen fairly large groups of robins in a tree and on the ground here in the Highland Park neighborhood. Yes, so the robins are here. There you go. You can sometimes see them in fairly large groups as they start to forage all together and everything like that. Or if there's a group that's migrating and kind of flying all together, they can form some pretty big groups. And it sounds like Stephanie has been seeing those in the Highland Park area. Lynn is on and says, I had a red-tailed hawk a week ago over here by the canal. So Lynn had a red-tailed hawk, it sounds like, in her yard or close by. Let's see. Leash is on and said, had a bald eagle fly over Spencerport the other day, hunting the Erie Canal. How cool is that? So that's not something you see every day. Stephanie says, such great photos. Thank you for sharing. Yes. Thank you, Mark, for sending in your photos all the time. He's always sending us in all kinds of cool photos. Sharon says, we have added extra safflower seeds to the mix. Birds are plentiful. Carolina wren has stayed, sings from my gazebo, very playful. So it sounds like Sharon has herself a Carolina wren. Here's the Carolina wren that's singing from her gazebo, and maybe it'll stick around and nest come the spring. So they're cavity nesters as well, and will nest in little bird houses. So you might just have a Carolina wren all year round. So it looks like that's everybody's comments and questions. We will be back on Saturday with another broadcast. And until then, have a great week, and we will talk